Back to Razmafsar TV. I'm really happy to be back here and talk to you. And today I'm going to start a new series. And this series is about the way I did research to revive Iranian or Persian swordsmanship. Many years ago, as you know, I interviewed many people on this channel, and one of them was the pioneer of European historical martial arts or Western martial arts, John Clements, and I interviewed him, and then followed by many others who I interviewed on this channel, many other people from the HEMA community. Over the years, HEMA community extended. Other researchers like Tom Poi, whom I interviewed also on this channel, used Destreza sources in Spanish. There were many others, like Devon Borman, from Canada, my colleague from Canada, who did it on Italian swordsmanship, and many other sources we have, Italian, Spanish, French, English, or many others. And people use them to interpret historical European martial arts or Western martial arts. Some of these texts have mostly or mainly pictures, not so much text. Let me just mention Talhofer, and there are still debates whether Talhofer really wrote a manual or was it more, say, an advertisement for his school. We don't know. So it leaves a lot to your imagination, for example, how longsword was used. There were others, like the Sword and Buckler manual, if you take a look at that, which has more texts, also pictorial images, 133, and then people looked at them, interpreted on it, and then, of course, there are different interpretations. There are also treatises which have much more text into it. Let's talk about Fiore di Liberi or German and whatever. But let us admit this. Of course we have texts in them. Of course we have pictorial images. Some of them don't have even any pictures. Anyhow, once you read them, you need to interpret them and put all your experience to interpret these images. There are some considerations from academic point of view to take into account. First of all, these pictorial texts or these images are not or no photographs. Very often we believe, oh, they are exact representations. Of course they are not. They're also artistic. They follow artistic conventions. Nevertheless, they provide valuable information, and we should not forget that. But then, based on your background, you interpret into these texts and based on your experience in different martial arts, or the body mechanics and body movement help you understand the text better. Let's put it this way. If you practiced wrestling or judo or grappling or whatever, once you go and interpret a wrestling manual, it is for you much easier to understand. If you do not have these backgrounds, you don't know what a takedown is done, you're not going to understand the mechanics of the body the way a wrestler or judo does. Admittedly, you can come and say someone who has judo or wrestling background might interpret his judo and wrestling techniques into interpreting the treatise. That's a fair point. But anyhow, we do interpretations. Better to have martial arts background, in my humble opinion, and to interpret them correctly as a martial artist than to make assumptions. Now, that being said, I would like to mention one more point. Later on, we see, for example, some colleagues who did Sword and Buckler use that experience to revive Viking swordsmanship. You see that there are lots of them now. But in Viking swordsmanship, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as I know, there are no manuals and treatises or Fechtbuch, as we say in German. Yeah, Fechtbuch in German, of course, we pronounce it this way. And so it's a much more interpretation, because also for Viking swordsmanship, we also lack tons of miniatures as we have in Persia, for example, or paintings or whatever. There were different steps I took or I made when I wanted to revive Persian swordsmanship. First of all, I think in the video on Lexicon on arms and armor from Iran, my book I already wrote, already back then, that gave me a drive, impetus to embark on a journey of reviving Persian swordsmanship. Remember, my lexicon was published 2010, 12 years ago. During the research for this lexicon, which has 5,700 words, I came to the conclusion or finding that many techniques, like shamshir ba farq zadan, to strike the top of the head with a sword, shamshir ba gardan zadan, to strike the neck, it has a consistency. This consistency I found back then in different manuals, different books, and battle accounts, right? And then I could see that also in miniatures. So then the question for me was the artist who was following the artistic convention, did he read the text, Shamshir ba farq zadan, and produce the miniature, right? Remember that? Take, for example, Shahnameh into consideration. And again, I repeat, and he was influenced by the external factors in the society he lived in. And he was influenced, maybe he heard about that, maybe he witnessed a battle, or maybe he took part in it. You never know, because there were also treatises where, like Al-Amara, where people also themselves, some of them at least, witnessed battles or even took part in it. So this consistency was interesting for me. And then for example, when I had Shamshir as an entry for the lexicon, then I went Shamshir ba farq zadan, opened another entry. Shamshir ba gardan zadan, opened another entry, and so on and so on and so on. Because I collected that for my next research on Persian archery and swordsmanship book. Persian language was the language of culture in the region, as you know that. I'm not saying that because of my Persian background. This is shared by all researchers. Persian, you can find many, many texts in Persian. And now I'm talking about New Persian. New Persian is one step in Persian language. We have also Pahlavi. Many of the texts were destroyed, as we all know, right? And back then in Avestan language, and back then also written in cuneiform, Old Persian. And even there, we have found, just recently, my colleagues found Pahlavi inscriptions and writings. But back to the Persian, New Persian, I have published so many translated, annotated archery manuals. I have translated, annotated on Goharnameh, right? Book of Jewels and Precious Stones and Gems. I have translated and annotated on firearms and so on and so forth. So when we come here and take all these things into consideration, Persian language has hundreds and thousands, thousands of manuals which need to be translated and interpreted into English. You will not believe it's not only about weapons, it's about jewels, it's about culture, it's about different artwork, making arts and so on, and so cooking and so on. And we have many, many miniatures. Just take Shahnameh miniatures into consideration. It's not the only one. So let me just embark on Shamshir ba farq zadan. And I would like to share something with you. So having only a Fechtbuch, as we say it in German, does not mean that that's the only way you can interpret swordsmanship. This is one way. And there you also need to interpret, as you know. Let me just go and share this with you. So this is my file, Shamshir ba farq zadan. Khavaran Name is one of the books I analyzed. I mean, I'm not going to show all those books and regarding battle accounts, hundreds of books and miniatures I analyzed. I'm only sharing one of them, which is Khavaran Name. Khavaran Name was written by Ibn Hisham Khusufi Bijandi. His longer name was Shamsuddin Muhammad ibn Hisamuddin Hassan, the son of Sheikh Shamsuddin Zahid. He was born in the village of Khusuf, 40 kilometers away from Bijand, a city in Iran, in southern Khorasan. His grandson Hesami Va'iz reports in Tarikh Hesami that Ibn Hisham Khusufi Bijandi lived 92 years, and as his date of death is indicated, is 875 Hijrah, is 1470 Gregorian year, our year. He should have been born in around 782 Hijrah, which makes 1380, or 783, which makes 1382 approximately. Ibn Hisham Khusufi Bijandi was a free and educated man and earned his living as a farmer. Although he was very good at writing panegyrical poems, he never praised, so he was good at panegyrical poems. He never praised the kings and rulers, and instead chose to praise the family of the Prophet Muhammad. His most famous works is Khavaran Name, that earned him the title as the second Ferdowsi. Khavaran Name deals with the life and heroic deeds of Hazrat Ali and his followers. That's interesting because in Iran we know that also our colleagues who do analysis on Shiites, and so that there are parallels between Rostam and Hazrat Ali, right? But this is, let's stick to this Khavaran Name. So you see in Khavaran Name, for example, there have lots of miniatures and the heroic deeds of Hazrat Ali. Here you see that, for example, one of these strikes of Shamshir ba farq zadan. If I may, you might come and say, okay, given the time of Khavaran Name, the Shamshirs were not that highly curved. I mean, I believe highly curved swords were much earlier as Shah Abbas the first, but I will make a video on that because I have also new findings on that. But anyhow, here we have, at least we can say either two ways. Back then, most swords which were used were not highly curved, but it had little curve. You see that here. And as you can tell, it has a sharp back edge or raised back edge, possibly. Yelman, as our colleagues in Turkish say, or Yalman in our language, Persian. And you see the Hushe Shamshir, we also use it in Persian, Hushe Shamshir. And the thing is, okay, here Hazrat Ali, if I'm not mistaken, that's him. He's striking Shamshir ba farq zadan. He's on horseback. And then here you see that the defense is not complete. He's bleeding. You see that? So you see that there is a cut here. The interesting thing is, if you take the length of the sword into consideration, I'm doing a calculation on these things, we'll publish on its suit. You see the point of strike with the sword. Actually, this should be point of percussion. This should be exactly, center of percussion of the sword. And because once he hits it here through a draw cut, he draws from here up to here, right? It comes here. That's interesting for me. As you know, I do lots of cutting tests and also practice different martial arts, among them Razmafzar. And as an avid practitioner of cutting tests or tameshigiri, I can mention this is really interesting that this is, it's here, right? You see also the pommel cap here at this stage. Excuse me, I see the pommel cap. Is this the horse? The pommel cap here. I mean, at this stage is not that much at 90 degrees, right? So this one. Here, Shamshir ba farq zadan, again, you see the same technique being applied. I think this is like a monster, if I'm not mistaken, but who is actually turned his back and fleeing, escaping. And you can see that here, that the Shamshir here is this famed Zulfaqar. We know that Zulfaqar, I wrote also an academic article on that Zulfaqar is actually not, which was two-pointed, right? I will write on it, because it has sahib faqararat, it has a spine. But I will come back to it and make a video on that. But as for now, Zulfiqar is depicted two ways, or is even forged two ways by crucible steel. We have examples. I will make a video on that as well. Either imagine they have two, imagine this is the blade, and this is the edge of the blade. So either it has two blades which are forged together, and then you hit at the same time with two, or this is forged the way you see it in this miniature. There is the blade, the edge here. There is another one on top, right? This way, which makes it like an opening in the blade. But then the question is, once they are parallel to each other, you have two blades hitting. In this case, only one of them hits. So what's the purpose of that behind that? But then on Zulfiqar, I wrote an academic article on that. Also in my book, Arms and Armor from Iran, I talked about it, so I will come back to it. Here you see again, this, if I'm not mistaken, monster, whatever, bleeding. And you see that here, point of percussion should be here. So either it is after it was drawn towards himself, a very heavy sword, and you see that the striking area. Here you see shamshir bar farq zadan is with the left hand, and this is in the process of being hit. And here is defending his chest, and shamshir bar hava kardan. This is before shamshir bar farq zadan, which I found it as well. And look at this here, he's with the wrestling, to indicate his power, of course. This guy is holding his hand actually as well. But that's not now, wrestling is not important for us. This is this. Look at this again. Again, look at the center of percussion, the hitting, where the hand is held. And if I compare it to here or to here, you see, you look at the angle, and now look at the angle here. It's much more raised. Here, I think you see the effects of it. That's interesting. You see again, center of percussion, and now the strike cuts right. Shamshir bar, excuse me, separ bar sar keshidan is defending the top of the head with the separ. It cuts it, okay, either exaggeration and sword strike, of course, cutting through the shield, cutting through the helmet, and goes to the neck. We have these accounts, but interestingly, when I was analyzing military museum of Tehran from Sadabad complex, some of the helmets had cuts into them. And here you see that again, the same technique, shamshir bar farq zadan. And you can see it also in the text, right? Look at this here. This is much shorter. This is a much shorter one. And you see that the cut goes right through the head to the navel, shorter blade, I mean. And this is interesting to see. This is the effects of that. And now here, even against the dragon, the same technique is applied. You see that here. Again, from Khabaran Nameh, attempts of doing the same technique. This is shamshir bar farq zadan, a vertical strike which goes downward, right? The same is here, in this case against a monster, right? And here, before everyone comes and tells us, all these miniatures you show, there are people on horseback, actually it's not true. I can also show you the same amount of fights happening on the ground with shamshir. This is one of them. Look at that. And then the stretching is done. Be careful of stretching. I remember one of our former friends and members, he said once, yeah, you need to really stretch to hit the guy. If you overstretch, you might hit the guy, but you don't have force into your shamshir power. Remember, for cutting, you need to have the right position and right balance. This is not a game of tag that you overstretch and hit the guy. Even if you hit the guy like that, you're not going to be able to cut. So this should be the final stage of the cut, where you, first of all, have the full power, and then you might stretch the way it is shown here. Here you see that again with the left hand, and look at the power of the cut. Again, you need to calculate. We need to calculate this where it is cut, right? Same thing here. You see the same shamshir ba farq zadan here. You can take a look at that, how it is done here, right? And now we go to Olamaroi Shah Ismail, a Safavid period, a later period. Again, we see in textual evidence of shamshir ba farq zadan, which is reported, and we see also this cut. What is interesting for me is Shah Ismail, but the sword is quite curved, as you can tell. You see the curve is much more Safavid period, but look where it is hit. It is hit close to the fort, not here, right? So either you can say he cut it, did he do a push cut? Or he cut right through it without even pulling. But interesting, these are things which we need to compare different. Again, I'm aware there are no photographs, the artistic convention. But then again, someone who goes to such extent of detailing should have talked or known about the techniques, at least to some extent. Then we go Shamshir ba farq zadan in Shahnameh. Here you can have lots of it. Please take a look at this. Look at the stretched hand, look at the dropped wrist, and look at where it is hit, and the splashed hand in the helmet. You see, okay, here against the dragon, the same technique. You see here, he's even forced down from the horse. Look at this highly curved blade, and then it's hit. On foot, look which leg is forward, right, left, left. You see where it is hitting a stag, I believe, in his hunting scene. Same technique. They practice lots of their techniques in hunting before they go into the battle. And here, another Shahnameh, you see Shamshir ba farq zadan, just to show you different things. And again, this one, right? Please take a look at that again. Here's a dragon. And Rostam and Raksh is helping him, the horse. Look at how he's hiding behind the shield and how he stretches and hit. Remember, this is with a bazu band. I keep saying it, this is not 133. Many people say, oh, protecting the hand as they do it, right? This is not the same type of swordsmanship. Look how he stretched over that with the blade. Look where the shield is protecting, and then hand is protected by bazu band anyhow. The arm, I mean. And look at the position of the legs. This is the position we have in Razmafsar very often. Here, you see the hand is not that stretched, but look at this. This one is again stretched. I've shown it before, and dropped wrist. We go to Shahnameh Qavam, and here you can also see different types of Shamshir ba farq zadan, like here, like here, like here. You see here, here, and here, 3 Shamshir ba farq zadan. For example, take a look at this one again. Look how he's striking the guy. He's holding a separ and Shamshir, and he goes right through it. Look at this. Here we see that again, Shamshir ba farq zadan, Shahnameh Qavam. Please take a look at that, how he cuts it. And then again, this one. Look at the power of the cut. And again, it's a monster on a horseback. This is Rostami, I believe. Again, look at this. Bringing back the shield, you know that, if you want to stretch and gain power. Shahnameh Tahmasbi, we see it here as well. Again, different types of Shamshir ba farq zadan. You can take a look at that. Look at this. He even tries to grab in vain, grab the blade, but then he is cut. You see that, Shamshir ba farq zadan, from here up to here. Then we go to a very, very important treatise. This is Tarikh Jahangoshahi Naderi. Tarikh Jangoshahi Nadari was written by Mirza Muhammad Mehdi Estarabadi, the son of Nasser, who was the secretary of Nader Shah until the death of Nader Shah in 1160, 1747, Gregorian year. Estarabadi wrote about the conquest and the rule of Nader Shah in his manuscript. He finished his manuscript in 1171, Hijrah 1757. One of the advantages of this manuscript, please remember, is that it has 14 illustrations that depict battle scenes and other events in a realistic and detailed manner. Please take a look at that. Again, on foot, is like in a wrestling position. The guy is lying on his back trying to defend himself. He's pushing the shield back. Shamshir ba hava kardan, which one is stabbed before Shamshir ba farq zadan. Please take a look at that. This is the bigger context of that, right? This is realistic depictions. Look, highly curved swords, Shamshir ba farq zadan. Please take a look at that, where the strike is being done. Here it was, you see that? And Shahnameh Negaristan. Again, we go to Shahnameh, later period Shahnameh. Again, Shamshir ba farq zadan. Here you see that. Also stretching the, look at the combination of bazu band and shield, how they make one unit. That's what I keep saying in my teachings. Here also Shamshir ba farq zadan. Look at this. Look, that's the unit I talked about. That's the fascinating combination for defense. Now back to Lexicon of Arms and Armor from Iran. You know, here you see that Shamshir bar farq zadan starts from here. There are other Shamshir bar dast zadan to strike the hand, and by band dast and the wrist, by asp zadan to the horse. But here it starts Shamshir bar farq zadan. So all these things, you can see that in my lexicon, Shamshir bar gardan navakhtan, and then these things are explained. If you come to Persian Archery and Swordsmanship, then attacking the top of the head with downward vertical strike. I write about it here, for example, and compare sources of the miniatures on foot, on horseback. I should shown some of them here to you. And then we put them into practice and show them how these things are done. You see that lots of miniatures and also on foot here. I didn't show all of them to you here, but I just wanted you to know, look at the extent of which you can take a look at that, right? With Shamshir bar farq zadan. That being said, I wanted to mention that there are there is a lot of information on Persian swordsmanship, on fighting arts. The most important thing, I encourage my people in Razm Afzar, and everyone knows that. To understand Razm Afzar, I encourage all of them to do other martial arts as well. Realistic martial arts, as I call them. Be it you do BJJ, Kyokushin karate, any type of full contact karate, kickboxing, Muay Thai. You do wrestling, boxing. These contacts provides you with valuable information, not to play a game of tags. But if you hit someone, no, that's over. Fight is not over like that, even not with weapons. I encourage them, and many of you know that my students in Razm Afzar, I encourage them to go so far to gain different black belts, if they can. I know gaining black belts in Kyokushin, in BJJ, Judo, and all these realistic martial arts is not easy. It takes years if you are good, but it's worth it. And also practice Razm Afzar and train hard in that. There are no excuses, such as I don't have time, I couldn't do this and that. Because I believe only through this dedication and discipline, we can come back and understand the mechanics of fighting. Remember, mechanics of fighting and martial arts are interwoven and combined with heavy work and good high level of fitness and good body shape to understand the mechanics of the fight. If you're not in a good shape, after 30 seconds, you're out. So do sport, practice all the time, and follow the way. And in the next videos, I'm going to talk more about Razm Afzar, techniques and what I did in this field and show it to you. If you wish to buy any of these books like Lexicon or also Persian Archery and Swordsmanship, please go to my web shop. I have a web shop with different payment methods if you wish, and you can follow that. Thank you very much, and please subscribe to my channel and have a nice day. Thanks.